Admiral Kethavar stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the blue-green planet spin slowly in the distance. Earth. Such a small world, really. Nothing special about it when you looked at the numbers. Just another ball of rock and water floating around an average yellow star. But the creatures living on that world had caused quite a stir in the Zephyrian hegemony. Humans, they called themselves. A young species that had only recently figured out how to leave their home system. Most alien races took thousands of years to develop space travel. These humans had done it in just a few centuries. Kethavar's 4 eyes focused on the data scrolling across his command screen. The hegemony's intelligence reports painted a clear picture. Humans were primitive by galactic standards. They still used fusion reactors for power. Their ships ran on chemical rockets with some basic ion drives. Their weapons were simple projectiles and crude energy beams. "Admiral," his communications officer called out. "The Council has approved the final ultimatum." "Good," Kethavar replied, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had conquered 17 star systems. "Send it to the human homeworld." The message was simple and direct. The hegemony had offered the humans a choice: join them as a vassal species, provide tribute, and accept alien oversight of their world. In return, they would receive protection and access to advanced technology. It was the same offer every new species received when they were discovered. Most accepted. The few who refused were quickly reminded why the hegemony controlled over 3,000 worlds across 47 star systems. The human response came back 3 days later. Kethavar expected the usual diplomatic language about considering the offer or requesting more time. Instead, the message was just 2 sentences long. "We decline your offer. Prepare for our answer." The bridge fell silent. Kethavar read the message again, certain there had been a translation error. No species had ever responded to the hegemony with such boldness, especially not a primitive species that barely had faster-than-light travel. "Sir," his tactical officer said, "our scouts report no military buildup around Earth. Their orbital defenses are minimal. A few weapon platforms and some patrol ships. Nothing that could challenge even a single hegemony cruiser." Kethavar nodded. The humans were either very brave or very stupid, maybe both. He looked out at his fleet spreading across space like a metallic constellation, 847 ships, battleships the size of cities, cruisers with enough firepower to level continents, destroyers fast enough to catch anything that tried to run. The largest human ship on record was barely 300 meters long. Their entire space navy could fit inside one of his dreadnoughts with room to spare. "They must know they cannot win," said Commander Zixhal, his second-in-command. The insectoid alien's antenna twitched with what Kethavar recognized as amusement. "Perhaps they hope to negotiate better terms once they see our fleet." "Perhaps," Kethavar agreed. But something about the human response bothered him. There had been no fear in those words, no pleading or attempts at bargaining, just a flat refusal and a promise of some kind of answer. The hegemony had files on every known species in the galaxy. Most fell into predictable patterns. The logical ones calculated, the odds and surrendered. The emotional ones raged and fought desperately before being crushed. The spiritual ones prayed to their gods and accepted their fate. Humans seemed different. The intelligence reports described them as unpredictable. They had a history of achieving impossible victories through methods that made no sense to alien minds. When attacked, they did not always retreat or surrender. Sometimes they found ways to turn weakness into strength. But that was just primitive warfare on a single planet. Space combat was different. In space, numbers and technology mattered more than courage or cleverness. "Sir," the communications officer said, "we're receiving another transmission from Earth." "What do they say now?" Kethavar asked. "It's just a countdown, sir, starting from 72 hours. Kethvar's primary eyes narrowed. A countdown to what? Unknown, sir. They won't respond to our request for clarification. The Admiral considered this. Humans did love their dramatic gestures, according to the files. Maybe this was some kind of psychological warfare. Try to make the hegemony nervous while they prepared their surrender documents. Maintain position, he ordered. If they want to play games, we'll indulge them. When their countdown reaches 0, we'll see what kind of answer they can give with their primitive ships. 3 days passed slowly. The hegemony fleet maintained perfect formation at the edge of the solar system. Long-range sensors monitored Earth and its surrounding space. No massive military preparations. No fleets launching from hidden bases. Just normal civilian traffic and a few patrol ships going about their regular duties. The countdown continued. 60 hours. 48 hours. 24 hours. Kethvar found himself checking the tactical displays more often as the final hours approached. Not because he was worried. The humans could not possibly pose a threat to his fleet. But their confidence was puzzling. Either they had a plan that the hegemony could not detect, or they were simply accepting their fate with dignity. "Sir," the sensor operator called out, "I'm detecting a single ship launching from Earth's orbital shipyards." "Just one?" Kethvar asked. "Confirmed, sir. One ship. It appears to be heading in our direction." The Admiral's 4 eyes all focused on the tactical display. A single red dot appeared on the screen, moving slowly away from Earth. The computer quickly analyzed its trajectory and speed. "Time to intercept?" he asked. "At current velocity, approximately 18 hours, the tactical officer reported. Kethvar studied the approaching ship through the fleet's long-range sensors. It was larger than most human vessels they had on file, but still pathetically small compared to his warships. Maybe a kilometer long. Irregular shape. Crude construction materials. "Are they surrendering?" Commander Zixhal wondered aloud. "With one ship?" Kethvar shook his head. "No. This must be their answer. Their final gesture before we demonstrate the futility of resistance." The single human ship continued its approach. 18 hours became 12, then 6, then 3. As it drew closer, the hegemony's sensors got a better look at its construction. The ship was even more primitive than initial scans had suggested. Simple metal hull, basic fusion drive, energy readings that barely registered on their instruments. It looked like something cobbled together in a backyard workshop rather than a proper military vessel. "Sir," the communications officer said, "the human ship is hailing us." "Put them through." A human face appeared on the main screen. Male, middle-aged, with short gray hair and tired-looking eyes. He wore a simple uniform with no fancy decorations. "I am Captain Sarah Chen of the UES Determination," the human said. "We are here to deliver humanity's formal response to your ultimatum." Kethvar noticed the human had identified herself with a female name, but appeared male to his eyes. He made a mental note that human gender identification might be more complex than the files indicated. "I am Admiral Kethvar of the Zephyrian Hegemony," he replied. "We are prepared to receive your surrender." The human smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. "Admiral, we appreciate your offer. But humanity has decided to decline membership in your hegemony. We prefer to remain independent." "You understand the consequences of this decision?" Kethvar asked. "We do. Then you know your single ship cannot stand against our fleet." Captain Chen's smile grew wider. "Admiral, respectfully, you might want to reconsider your position. This is your last chance to withdraw peacefully." The bridge erupted in what passed for laughter among the various alien species represented in his crew. A single primitive ship threatening the entire hegemony fleet. The humans had clearly lost their minds. "Captain," Kethvar said, trying to keep the amusement out of his voice, "you are outnumbered 800 to 1. Your technology is centuries behind ours. Perhaps you should consider surrender while that option remains available. Negative. Admiral, we suggest you turn around and leave this system. What happens next is up to you. The transmission ended. Kethvar stared at the blank screen for a moment, then turned to his tactical officer. The human ship will be in weapons range. In 2 hours, prepare the fleet for combat. Commander Zixhel studied the approaching human vessel through the tactical scanner. Her compound eyes could process dozens of different energy wavelengths at once, giving her a detailed picture of the enemy ship's construction and capabilities. "Thou, humans must be insane," she muttered, her antenna twitching with disbelief. "One ship against our entire fleet." Around her, the bridge crew of various alien species went about their preparations for battle. The hegemony had learned long ago that diversity in thinking led to better solutions. Crystalline beings handled computational tasks with perfect logic. Gaseous entities managed energy systems with instinctive understanding. Silicon-based forms operated mechanical systems with precise efficiency. All of them agreed on one thing: the humans had made a fatal error in judgment. Lieutenant Quexmore, a being that looked like a walking tree with glowing fruit, adjusted the sensor array for a deeper scan. "Admiral, I'm getting detailed readings on the human vessel now." "Report," Admiral Kethvar commanded. "Length, 1,037 meters. Mass, approximately 2 million tons. Hull composition, titanium steel alloy with carbon fiber reinforcement. Very primitive materials, sir." Kethvar nodded. Even their smallest destroyers were larger than this human ship. His flagship alone massed 50 million tons and stretched over 10 kilometers from bow to stern. "Energy signature?" he asked. "Standard fusion reactors, sir. Maybe a dozen of them. Total output is about what we'd expect. From a civilian cargo hauler. Their weapon systems appear to be kinetic projectiles and basic plasma cannons. Shielding? Minimal electromagnetic barriers. Nothing that could stop our primary weapons for more than a few seconds." The data painted a clear picture. The human ship was exactly what it appeared to be: a primitive vessel with outdated technology, facing a fleet that had conquered half the galaxy. This would not be a battle. It would be target practice. "Sir," the communications officer called out, "we're receiving transmissions from the other fleet commanders. They're requesting permission to open fire as soon as the human enters range." Kethvar considered this. Standard hegemony protocol called for overwhelming force when dealing with resistance. Destroy the enemy quickly and completely to discourage others from making the same mistake. But something about this situation felt different. The human captain had seemed too confident, too calm. Either they were completely delusional, or they knew something the hegemony did not. "Tell the fleet to hold position," he decided. "I want to see what this single ship thinks it can accomplish." The human vessel continued its steady approach. No fancy maneuvers, no attempts to hide or retreat. Just a straight course toward the center of the hegemony formation. "Tactical assessment?" Kethvar asked his chief analyst. The spider-like being called Velthar consulted her displays. "The human ship will reach optimal firing range in 1 hour and 23 minutes. At current velocity, it will pass through our formation in approximately 45 minutes after that. Our ships could destroy it in the first 30 seconds of engagement. Estimated casualties on our side? 0, sir. Their weapons cannot penetrate our shields." Kethvar found himself studying the human vessel more carefully. Its design was definitely unusual. Most ships in the galaxy followed similar patterns. Sleek hulls for efficiency, symmetrical layouts for balance, standardized components for easy repair. This human ship looked organic, irregular, like it had been grown rather than built. The hull bulged and curved in unexpected places. Sensor arrays stuck out at odd angles. Engine nacelles were positioned asymmetrically. "Lieutenant Quexmore," he said, "run a detailed analysis of their hull configuration. I want to know why they built it that way." The tree-like alien's fruit sensors glowed brighter as he focused on the task. "Sir, The design appears highly inefficient. The irregular shape would create unnecessary stress points during acceleration. The asymmetrical layout would cause handling problems in combat. So why build it that way? Unknown, sir. Perhaps human engineering is simply inferior to galactic standards. That was the logical conclusion. Every species went through awkward phases as they developed technology. Maybe humans were still figuring out basic ship design principles, but Kethvar had lived long enough to be suspicious of obvious answers. In his experience, when something looked too simple, it usually meant you were missing important information. Sir, the sensor operator announced, the human ship has just entered our outer detection grid. Any change in their behavior? Negative. Still maintaining course and speed toward the fleet center. Kethvar watched the tactical display as the single red dot moved steadily toward the wall of blue symbols representing his ships. It reminded him of an ancient recording he had seen once, a single warrior charging an entire army with nothing but a sword and shield. Brave. Stupid. But definitely brave. Admiral, Commander Zixhal said quietly, perhaps we should hail them one more time. Offer them a chance to surrender before this becomes a massacre. No, Kethvar replied. They've made their choice. Let's see what humanity's final answer. Looks like. The human ship continued its approach, past the outer patrol line, through the destroyer screen, between the heavy cruisers, heading straight for the heart of the formation where the largest battleships waited. Sir, Lieutenant Quexamore said, I'm detecting some unusual energy fluctuations from the human vessel. What kind of fluctuations? Hard to say, sir. The readings don't match any known technology in our databases. It might be some kind of experimental shield system. Kethvar felt a small chill run down his spine. New technology was always dangerous, especially when you did not understand it. But how advanced could it be? Humans had only been in space for a few centuries. All ships, maintain alert status, he ordered. Be ready for anything. The minutes ticked by slowly. The human ship passed between his outer battleships, heading for the formation center. Still no aggressive moves. No weapons charging, no shields activating. 15 minutes to optimal firing range, the tactical officer reported. All. Ships report ready, communications added. Kethvar gripped the armrests of his command chair. Something was wrong. He could feel it in his bones. No species sent a single ship against impossible odds without some kind of plan, especially not humans, who had a reputation for being clever and unpredictable. Sir, Velthar called out urgently, I'm reading massive energy spikes from the human vessel. What kind of spikes? I don't know. The readings are off the scale. Whatever they're powering up, it's drawing more energy than should be possible from their reactor systems. Impossible. Our sensors confirmed their power output. They can't generate that much energy. I know, sir, but the readings are clear. Energy levels are climbing exponentially. Kethvar stood up from his chair. All ships, prepare for immediate combat. Charge weapons and raise shields. Sir, the communications officer said, we're receiving a transmission from the human ship. Put it through. Captain Chen appeared on the screen again. Behind her, the human bridge looked busy but calm. No signs of panic or desperation. Admiral Kethvar, she said, this is your final warning. Order your fleet to withdraw from this system immediately. Captain, you are in no position to make demands. Admiral, you've made assumptions about what you're facing. Those assumptions are about to be corrected. We scan one ship, Captain. One primitive vessel with outdated technology. Captain Chen smiled that same unpleasant smile. Admiral, you scan what we want you to scan. Humans learned a long time ago that showing your true strength too early is a mistake. The transmission ended. Sir! Velthar shouted. Energy readings from the human ship are going critical. Whatever they're doing, it's happening now. Kethvar stared at the tactical display. The single red dot representing the human vessel was still there, still alone, still impossibly outnumbered. But for the first time since this confrontation began, He wondered if 847 ships would be enough. The first sign that something was wrong came from the sensor arrays. Lieutenant Quexmore's fruit sensors began flashing in patterns that indicated system overload. Across the bridge, other monitoring stations started showing error messages. "Sir," Quexmore called out, his voice carrying a note of confusion that was rare for his species. "The human vessel is changing." Admiral Kethvar moved to the tactical display for a closer look. The single red dot that had represented the human ship was flickering, expanding, splitting into multiple contacts. "Explain," he ordered. "I don't understand it myself, sir. The ship appears to be unfolding. Sections that we thought were part of the hull are separating and moving into new positions." On the main screen, the visual feed from their forward cameras showed the human vessel in detail. What they had taken for an irregularly shaped hull was doing something impossible. Parts of the ship were extending outward on massive mechanical arms. Sections that had appeared to be sensor arrays were rotating and locking into new positions. "It's like watching a flower bloom," whispered Commander Zixhale, her antenna twitching rapidly with alarm. But this was no delicate flower. As the human vessel continued to unfold, its true size became apparent. What they had scanned as a 1-kilometer ship was revealing itself to be something much larger, much more complex. "Sir," Velthar reported from her analysis station, "current size estimate is 5 kilometers and growing. Mass readings are climbing past 50 million tons." "That's impossible," Kethvar said. "Our sensors would have detected that much mass." "I know, sir, but the readings are consistent across all our instruments." The unfolding process continued. Sections of what had appeared to be a single hull separated and extended on impossibly complex mechanical systems. Each section was the size of a cruiser. Each arm was longer than a battleship. 10 kilometers, Velthar updated. 100 million tons. "Sir, this thing is bigger than your flagship." "How?" Kethvar demanded. "How did they hide something this large?" "Unknown, sir. The technology required to compress matter to this degree is beyond anything in our databases." On the screen, the human construct continued to grow. 15 kilometers, 20, 30. What had started as a single ship was becoming a space station, a mobile fortress, a battle platform that dwarfed everything in the hegemony fleet. "Sir," the communications officer said, "we're receiving priority, transmissions from the other fleet commanders. They're all asking for instructions." Kethvar could imagine their confusion. 800 ships had surrounded what they thought was a primitive vessel. Now they found themselves facing something larger than most space stations. 40 kilometers and stabilizing, Velthar reported. "Final mass estimate, 800 million tons." The admiral stared at the tactical display. The single red dot had become a massive red circle that took up a significant portion of the screen. Around it, his fleet looked like small fish surrounding a whale. "Weapon signatures?" he asked. "Sir, I'm reading energy sources across the entire surface of the platform, hundreds of them, maybe thousands. Power output is beyond our ability to measure accurately." "What kind of weapons?" "Unknown. The energy patterns don't match anything in our databases." Kethvar felt a cold certainty settling in his stomach. Humans had not sent a single ship to face his fleet. They had sent a battle station, a mobile fortress that had disguised itself as a primitive vessel until the perfect moment. "Sir," Quexmore announced, "the platform is hailing us. Put them through." Captain Chen appeared on screen again, but now the background behind her had changed. Instead of a simple ship bridge, Kethvar could see a vast command center with dozens of control stations and hundreds of crew members. "Admiral," she said calmly, "I trust our revelation has been educational." "How?" was all Kethvar could manage. "Human engineering, Admiral. We've spent the last century studying every piece of alien technology we could get our hands on. Gravitational, field manipulation, matter compression, dimensional folding. We learned from the best. Impossible. Those technologies require centuries to develop. For most species, yes. But humans have a talent for taking existing ideas and combining them in new ways. We don't just copy technology, Admiral. We improve it. Behind Captain Chen, the command center hummed with activity. Humans moved between stations with practiced efficiency. Displays showed weapon systems coming online, shield generators charging, targeting computers acquiring locks on hegemony vessels. "What do you want?" Kethvar asked. "Nothing complicated. Turn your fleet around and leave this system. Never return. Spread the word that Earth is off limits. And if we refuse?" Captain Chen's expression grew serious. "Then you'll discover what 800 years of human military innovation looks like when properly motivated." The transmission ended. Kethvar turned to his tactical officer. "Assessment?" "Sir, even if we combined the firepower of our entire fleet, I'm not certain we could penetrate that platform's defenses. It's simply too large and too well armed." "Recommendations?" The bridge fell silent. No one wanted to be the first to suggest retreat. The hegemony had never backed down from a fight. Their reputation was built on overwhelming force and absolute victory. But they had also never faced anything like this. "Sir," Commander Zixhal said quietly, "perhaps we should consider a strategic withdrawal. Regroup, study this new technology, return with a larger force." It was the sensible choice, but Kethvar knew what would happen if word spread that the hegemony had been forced to retreat by a single human platform. Other species would start to question their dominance. Rebellions would begin. The careful balance of power that had maintained peace for centuries would collapse. "No," he decided. "We attack. All ships. Target the platform's weapon systems. Concentrated fire. Maximum intensity." "Sir," Velthar protested, "the platform is surrounded by our own ships. If we attack with full force, we risk hitting our own vessels. Then tell them to clear the area. All ships, fall back to minimum safe distance and prepare for full assault." The hegemony fleet began to move. 847 warships repositioning themselves around the human platform. It was like watching ants trying to surround a sleeping giant. "Sir," the sensor operator called out, "the platform is rotating, bringing weapons to bear on our ships." On the main screen, the massive human construct was turning slowly in space. As it moved, weapon systems became visible across its surface. Not the simple projectile weapons they had expected, but complex arrays that seemed to bend light around them. "All ships report ready for assault," the communications officer announced. Kethvar took a deep breath. Once this started, there would be no going back. Either the hegemony would destroy this human monstrosity, or they would learn why humanity had been so confident. "All ships," he commanded, "open fire." Space erupted in light as 800 warships unleashed their weapons simultaneously. Energy beams, plasma bolts, and kinetic projectiles streamed toward the human platform. It was enough firepower to destroy a small moon. The attack struck the platform's shields and simply vanished. "Direct hits across all weapon systems," the tactical officer reported. "No visible damage to the target." "What?" Kethvar stared at the screen. "That's impossible. No shield system can absorb that much energy." "Sir," Velthar said, her voice filled with growing alarm, "I'm reading massive energy spikes from the platform. It's like they're converting our weapons fire into power for their own systems." The human platform completed its rotation. Thousands of weapon arrays now faced the hegemony fleet. Energy readings climbed beyond anything the aliens had ever recorded. "Incoming transmission," the communications officer announced. Captain Chen appeared on screen one final time. "Admiral, you should have listened. Humanity tried to do this peacefully." "What are you?" Kethvar whispered. "We're human, Admiral. And we don't like bullies." The transmission ended. The human platform opened fire. The first wave of human weapons fire was unlike anything the hegemony had ever encountered. Instead of simple energy beams or projectiles, the platform unleashed forces that bent the laws of physics. Gravitational lances reached out from the platform like invisible hands, grabbing hegemony destroyers and crushing them into balls of twisted metal. The ship's crews had no time to scream. One moment they were flying in formation, the next they were compressed into spheres barely 100 meters across. "Evasive maneuvers," Admiral Kethvar shouted. "All ships, scatter pattern Delta!" But the human weapons tracked their targets with impossible precision. Quantum disruptors phased matter out of existence, causing entire sections of battleships to simply disappear. The affected vessels broke apart as their structural integrity collapsed, leaving behind debris fields that sparkled with strange energy. "Sir," Commander Zixhal reported, her voice tight with shock, "we've lost 47 ships in the first salvo." "Return fire, all weapons, continuous barrage." The hegemony fleet responded with everything they had. Hundreds of ships poured energy into the human platform. Plasma cannons that could melt asteroids, particle beams that could punch through planetary shields, kinetic impactors moving at significant fractions of light speed. All of it struck the platform's shields and vanished into nothing. "Sir," Lieutenant Quexmore called out, "the platform is absorbing our weapons fire, converting it to energy for their own systems. The more we shoot at them, the stronger they become." "That's impossible," Kethvar said. "No technology can be 100% efficient." Human technology can, apparently. The platform's second volley was even more devastating than the first. New weapons came online, energy webs that spread between ships and overloaded their power systems, temporal distortions that aged hull metal until it crumbled into dust, matter converters that transformed solid armor into explosive gas. "Losses now at 130 ships," Zixhal reported. "Sir, our weapons are useless against them. We need to withdraw." "No!" Kethvar slammed his fist on the armrest of his command chair. "We are the hegemony. We do not retreat from primitives." "With respect, sir, these are not primitives." On the main screen, the human platform continued its methodical destruction of the fleet. Each weapon system seemed designed for a different purpose. Some targeted engines, leaving ships helpless. Others focused on life support, forcing crews to evacuate. A few simply erased their targets from existence. The tactical display showed the hegemony fleet shrinking rapidly. Red symbols disappearing one by one as ships were destroyed or disabled. The beautiful formation that had seemed so overwhelming just minutes ago was falling apart. "Sir," Velthar announced, "I'm analyzing the human weapons. They're using principles we've never seen before. Gravitational manipulation beyond our understanding. Quantum effects that shouldn't be possible. Energy conversion systems that violate thermodynamics. How can one species develop so many advanced technologies so quickly?" "I don't think they developed them, sir. I think they stole them." Kethvar turned to face his chief analyst. "Explain." "Every weapon system on that platform uses technology from a different species. Zephyrian gravitational research, Kexathari quantum mechanics, Velnari energy conversion. But they've combined them in ways none of us ever considered. They're using our own science against us? Not just using it, improving it, making it better than we ever could." Another wave of fire from the platform swept through the hegemony. Formation. Ships that had served for centuries were reduced to scrap in seconds. Crews that had conquered worlds died without understanding what had killed them. "Losses now at 250 ships," Zixhal reported. "Half our fleet is gone." Kethvar stared at the tactical display. The red symbols representing his ships were scattered across space like drops of blood. The massive blue circle of the human platform sat in the center, untouched and growing stronger. "Sir," the communications officer said, "we are receiving surrender. Requests from multiple ships. They want permission to evacuate. Tell them to maintain position and continue fighting." "Sir," The crew of the destroyer Kethmore reports that their ship is being pulled apart by gravitational forces. They're requesting immediate evacuation. On the screen, Kethvar could see the destroyer in question. The ship was stretching like heated metal, its hull elongating as invisible forces tore it apart. Escape pods were launching frantically from the dying vessel. All ships with escape capability begin evacuation procedures, he finally ordered. But maintain fire on the target. The evacuation began. Across the fleet, crews abandoned their posts and fled to smaller vessels that might survive the battle. But the human platform seemed to have infinite patience. It waited for each ship to launch its escape pods before destroying the hull. "They're letting our people escape," Zixhal observed. "Why would they do that? Maybe they don't want to commit genocide. Maybe they just want us to leave." "Sir," Quexmore interrupted, "I'm detecting new energy signatures from the platform, something different from their weapons." "What kind of signatures?" "Unknown. But the energy patterns are spreading outward from the platform toward our ships." On the screen, waves of strange energy rippled through space like heat distortions. As they passed over hegemony vessels, something remarkable happened. The ship's weapons stopped firing, their engines shut down, their shields collapsed. "Sir," the tactical officer reported, "all our ships are losing power. Weapons offline, engines dead, life support on emergency backup." "What did they do to us?" I think they're draining our power systems remotely, taking the energy right out of our ships." The human platform had effectively neutralized the entire hegemony fleet without destroying a single additional vessel. 800 warships floated helpless in space, their crews trapped but alive. "Incoming transmission," the communications officer announced. Captain Chen appeared on the screen. Behind her, the command center showed humans working calmly at their stations. No celebration, no gloating. Just professional efficiency. "Admiral Kethvar," she said, "your fleet is disabled but intact. Your crews are alive. We're going to restore minimal power to your ships so you can return home." "Why?" Kethvar asked. "Why not finish us?" "Because we're not conquerors, Admiral. We just want to be left alone." "This changes nothing. The hegemony will return with a larger fleet." Captain Chen smiled sadly. "No, Admiral. You won't." "What makes you so certain?" "Because by the time you get home, every species in the galaxy will know what happened here. They'll know that humanity defeated the mighty hegemony with a single platform. They'll know that we turned your own technology against you." "You think they'll rebel?" "I think they'll realize they don't need the hegemony's protection anymore. Not when there's a new power in the galaxy that actually respects independence." The transmission ended. Slowly, power began returning to the hegemony ships. Engines came online. Life support stabilized. Weapons systems remained offline. "Sir," Zixhal said quietly, "what are your orders?" Kethvar looked at the tactical display one last time. The human platform sat unchanged in the center of space, still bristling with weapons that had proven unstoppable. Around it, the scattered remnants of his fleet limped toward the edge of the system. "Signal all ships," he said finally. "We're going home." The retreat began. 847 ships had entered the Sol system in perfect formation, confident in their superiority. Now less than 600 damaged vessels fled toward the edge of space, their crews traumatized by technologies they could not understand. As his flagship cleared the outer planets, Kethavar turned for one last look at Earth. The blue-green world still spun peacefully in the distance, seemingly unchanged by the battle that had just reshaped galactic politics. But everything had changed. The hegemony's age of unchallenged dominance was over, and it had been ended by a species that most of the galaxy still considered primitive. Humans, it seemed, were full of surprises. 3 months after the Battle of Sol, the galaxy was a different place. The news had spread faster than anyone expected. Trade routes carried stories of humanity's impossible victory. Diplomatic channels buzzed with reports of the hegemony's retreat. Independent news networks broadcast footage of the massive human platform that had defeated 800 warships. On the hegemony capital world of Zephyr Prime, Admiral Kethvar stood before the High Council in a chamber that had seen the planning of 1,000 conquests. Today, it hosted his disgrace. "Explain," demanded High Counselor Thexvar, her crystalline form refracting the chamber's lights into angry red patterns. "How does a primitive species defeat our entire expedition fleet?" "They were not primitive," Kethvar replied. "That was our mistake. Our intelligence reports clearly indicated human technology was centuries behind ours. Our intelligence was wrong, or perhaps the humans wanted us to think they were weak." Around the circular chamber, representatives of 12 species that made up the hegemony's ruling council shifted uncomfortably. The Zephyrians with their crystal bodies, the Kexthari insectoids, the gaseous Velnari, the silicon-based Quex. All of them had contributed to the hegemony's technological superiority. All of them were struggling to understand how their combined knowledge had been turned against them. "Show us the recordings," ordered Counselor Velnith, her gas form swirling with agitation. The chamber's central hologram activated, displaying the final moments of the battle. The massive human platform appeared in the center of the room, its weapons systems clearly visible. Around it, the scattered remains of the hegemony fleet fled toward the edge of the system. "This weapon platform," Thexvar said, studying the image. "Our analysts claim it uses our own technologies, improved versions of our technologies," Kethvar corrected. "They took our gravitational research and made it 100 times more efficient. They took Kexathari quantum mechanics and applied it in ways we never considered. They took Velnari energy conversion and perfected it beyond our understanding." "Impossible. It takes millennia to develop such advances. Not if you steal the foundation work from 12 different species and spend a century figuring out how to combine it." The council chamber fell silent. The implications were staggering. If humans could take existing technology and improve it so dramatically, what else were they capable of? "What do we know about their current capabilities?" asked Counselor Quexmore, his tree-like form rustling with concern. "Very little," Kethvar admitted. "They've closed their borders. No ships allowed in or out of their system. Our long-range sensors can't penetrate whatever jamming technology they're using. But they're building more platforms?" "Almost certainly. Intelligence suggests massive construction projects throughout their system, orbital shipyards working around the clock, resource extraction operations that dwarf anything we've seen. How many platforms could they build?" "Unknown. But humans reproduce quickly and learn faster. If they can build one platform in a century, they might be able to build 10 in the next decade." The council members exchanged worried glances. The hegemony's power was based on technological superiority and overwhelming force. If humans could match or exceed their capabilities while building faster and learning quicker, the balance of power in the galaxy would shift dramatically. "What about our member species?" Thexvar asked. "How are they responding to news of our defeat?" Kethvar had been dreading this question. 17 systems have declared independence. 43 others are demanding renegotiated treaties. The Outer Rim territories are in open rebellion. Rebellions we can handle. Not these rebellions. They're being supplied with human technology. The chamber erupted in shocked murmurs. Thexvar's crystalline form flared bright red with anger. "Humans are arming our enemies?" "Not exactly. They're sharing defensive technologies, shield systems, sensor jammers, point defense networks. Nothing offensive but enough to make conquest much more difficult. Why would they do that?" "Their stated policy is simple. Any species that wants independence will receive help defending themselves. Any species that tries to conquer others will face direct intervention. They're setting themselves up as galactic peacekeepers?" "It appears so." Counselor Velneth's gaseous form swirled thoughtfully. "What do our military analysts recommend?" They suggest we avoid direct confrontation with humanity for the foreseeable future. Focus on consolidating our remaining territories. Invest in new research programs to counter their technological advantages. How long would that take? Centuries, maybe longer. The admission hung in the air like a death sentence. The hegemony had ruled for 2,000 years. The idea of spending centuries just trying to match a species that had been spacefaring for less than 300 years was humiliating beyond words. There is one other option, Kethvar said quietly. What option? Negotiation. The humans have made it clear they're not interested in conquest. They just want to be left alone, and they want other species to have the same choice. You're suggesting we surrender our authority? I'm suggesting we adapt to new realities. The age of galactic empires may be ending. The council chamber fell silent again. Outside the great windows, the capital city of Zephyr Prime sprawled across the horizon. Billions of beings living under hegemony rule, thousands of species that had accepted alien oversight in exchange for peace and protection. But peace enforced through fear was not the same as genuine stability. And many of those species were beginning to realize they might have other options. What exactly are the humans proposing? Thexvar asked finally. A new galactic order based on voluntary cooperation instead of forced submission. Independent species, working together through mutual agreements, trade networks based on fair exchange rather than tribute, defensive alliances instead of conquest. And if we refuse, then we face the same choice we offered to every species we conquered: submit or be destroyed. The irony was not lost on any of them. The hegemony's own words were being used against them by a species they had tried to subjugate. How do we know the humans won't simply become the new oppressive empire? Counselor Quexmore asked. We don't, Kethvar admitted, but their actions so far suggest they're genuinely different. They've had 3 months to expand their territory, and they haven't claimed a single new system. They've had opportunities to crush our remaining forces, and they've chosen restraint. Or they're simply being patient, building their strength before revealing their true intentions. Perhaps. But consider the alternative. If we continue on our current path, we face ongoing rebellions, economic collapse, and eventual defeat. If we negotiate with the humans, we might find a way to coexist peacefully. The debate continued for hours. Some council members wanted to fight. Others preferred to wait and see. A few suggested trying to steal human technology to level the playing field. But in the end, practical reality won out. The hegemony was weakening. Their enemies were growing stronger. And somewhere in the Sol system, humans were building weapons that could reshape the galaxy. Send a message to Earth, Thexvar decided finally. Tell them we're willing to discuss terms. What terms should I propose? Start with a ceasefire, recognition of current territorial boundaries, establishment of neutral trade zones, and if they demand more, then we'll have to consider it. The age of hegemony dominance is over. We need to find our place in whatever comes next. The transmission to Earth was sent that same day. The response came back within hours, proving that humans had been waiting for this moment. Captain Chen appeared on the communication screen, no longer in the cramped bridge of a disguised warship, but in what appeared to be a formal diplomatic chamber. High Council of the Zephyrian Hegemony, she said. Humanity is pleased to receive your message. We accept your proposal for negotiations, but understand that any agreement must be based on genuine equality and mutual respect. What are your terms? Thexvar asked. Simple. The right of all species to choose their own government, the end of forced tribute and involuntary military service, fair trade agreements based on mutual benefit, and a guarantee that the days of galactic conquest are over, and in return, peace, trade, shared knowledge for the benefit of all, and protection for any species that chooses independence. You would defend other species against us? We would defend any species against any aggressor, including ourselves, if we ever became what we fought against. The negotiations took months, but eventually they reached an agreement. The hegemony would transition from an empire to a voluntary confederation. Species could choose to remain or declare independence. Military forces would be reduced to defensive levels. Trade would be based on fair exchange rather than tribute. It was not a perfect solution. Some species chose to remain with the hegemony out of fear or tradition. Others declared independence and struggled with the responsibilities of self-governance. A few attempted to become conquerors themselves and found human platforms waiting to discourage them. But it was better than endless war. Better than the cycle of oppression that had defined galactic politics for millennia. And in the Sol system, the massive platform that had changed everything slowly folded back into its disguised configuration. To outside observers, it once again appeared to be nothing more than a single, unremarkable,